It is 3 a.m. It's raining so hard that it feels like the world is coming to an end. Maybe it is, but not the world itself, but rather, my world. I hope it lets me finish this post before it gets me. I can feel it creeping around, lurking in the shadows right outside of my room. You see, when I was a kid, I had a best friend, Robert. Robert was my neighbor and the weird kid on the block. He was a little boy with dark short hair, big glasses, and braces. His mother also dressed him up in khakis and plaid shirts. So I guess you can tell that the other kids gave him a hard time. And I mean a really hard time. It wasn't uncommon to see Robert tripping near Carlos, breaking his glasses, getting his nose broken, and his arms full of bruises. Robert was always getting into some kind of accident when Carlos was around. I was an average kid, not popular by any means, but not an outcast like Robert. I got along pretty well with Robert, and, as I said, he was my best friend. Well, considering what happened, I guess he was more of a friend to me than I was to him. I really wanted to be cool, to be in the group. You know how it feels, the need to be friends with the cool guys like Carlos. Carlos was a big, strong kid. Everyone wanted to be Carlos's friend, or at least be on his good side. The thing is, Carlos was an aggressive, hostile, inhuman piece of shit. I guess all the beatings he took from his dad, the beatings he saw his mom get from his dad, it all damaged him. I can't blame him. Going through hell like that can change a grown-ass man. I can only imagine what it does to a kid. The harder his dad beat him, the harder he picked on us. Especially Robert. As much as I liked Robert, I didn't want to be seen around him in public. I didn't want Carlos to find out I was his only friend. It would be my end. But he knew. He always knew. I always tried to be Carlos's friend. I tried to talk to him every day, give him my toys, everything. He would take my stuff, but not before beating me up or just ignoring me and taking them. It was Halloween night of 1989, and my chance to join the group finally came. Carlos told me that he would be my friend and let me in his group, if I would do just one little thing for him. We had big parties in the neighborhood, especially on Halloween. Kids from other neighborhoods would come to our parties. They were huge with lots of candy and attractions, so you can imagine that everyone was distracted. Carlos told me that if I could convince Robert to come with me to the abandoned house a few blocks away from the party, I was in. All I had to do was get Robert to come so the boys could play a harmless prank on him. Just a scare, they told me. And I believed them. At least I tell myself that every day. Robert trusted me. After all, I was his best friend. He didn't hesitate. He didn't even ask. He just trusted me and came. When we got there, Carlos and his friends were waiting for us. I could see the look of confusion on Robert's face. He tried to run, but I tripped him and held him to the ground. He looked at me scared, angry, confused, and sad. I wanted to cry right then and there. Robert had been nothing but a good friend to me, and I used that to befriend Carlos. I just wanted to be popular. Carlos and his friends came closer, pushed me aside, and started beating Robert. They punched and kicked him harder than I had ever seen them. Robert moaned and screamed and cried and asked for my help. "Please, John, help me! Why are you doing this?" I was scared. I was so scared. Terrified. I froze. Carlos had gone too far this time. He thought it would be funny to smash Robert's glasses with the plank he found in the house while Robert was still wearing them. I guess Carlos didn't know how strong he was, or at least, that's what I want to believe. Then he smashed Robert's head so hard then I actually heard something crack. Robert's pleading and screaming suddenly stopped. A pool of blood began to form under his head. I had never seen so much blood in my life, and I haven't seen it since. Carlos and his friends were laughing their asses off until they realized how much blood there was. They tried to shake Robert, slap him, tell him to wake up or they would kill him right there. Turns out they already had. They turned on me and held me down. Carlos told me that if I ever said anything, a single word, I would end up like him. Then he told me to get the plank, the same one, and give Robert one last blow to the head. I cried, I begged, I even vomited. But Carlos would have none of it. He said either I did it and became part of it, or I would end up the same way. So I did it. Carlos and his friends left with the plank in their hands, and I stayed there a few minutes. I didn't know whether to cry or get help or stay. I remember sitting at his side, just repeating, "I'm so sorry, Robert. I'm so sorry. I didn't know." Eventually, I left. It didn't take long for Robert's parents to start worrying and looking for him. They came to my house to ask me if I had seen him, but I just lied through my teeth. A few days later, they found his body. It was news for a few days, with headlines like "Local Boy Brutally Murdered." Some were much more sensational, like "Local Kid Brutally Murdered, New Serial Killer Around." Some neighbors even said they saw, and I quote, "a black man running from the scene." Bigots and racists. They didn't see shit because nobody was around. They just wanted to incite and spread their racism. Some time passed. A year, 2 years. They tried to sell the house, but no one wanted to buy it. No surprises there, I guess. The guilt ate me up so badly. I had to tell him I was sorry. I had to let him know. So as stupid as it sounds, I bought a Ouija board and went to that house to try it. I was so desperate to communicate with him. Nothing happened. I was so angry that he didn't answer that I just threw the board away and went home. That night was the first night when it all started. I remember having a strange dream. I was begging and crying while some random people were beating me. It was terrible. I could feel the pain. I didn't recognize anyone until I looked around and saw me. When I woke up, I realized that I was Robert in that dream. I felt everything he felt that night. The pain, the agony. But worst of all, it wasn't even the pain that hurt him more. It was my betrayal. I felt sick and disgusted. I was nothing but a murderer, a monster. I felt horrible. But nightmares happen, and it was just a dream. He couldn't really hurt me, and I would probably dream about it for another day or two and move on, right? I was never more wrong. I dreamt about that night for 2 more weeks. It started to affect me so much that I stopped eating. My grades went way down, and I didn't want to leave my room. My parents were worried sick about me. They talked to me and tried to understand. I could hear them crying at night, and that made me feel even worse, if that is possible. They put me in therapy, and even though I could never be honest about it, it helped a little. The dream stopped for a few years until I went to college. I was lucky enough to have parents who could rent an apartment for me, so I didn't have any roommates. But I heard noises every night. I would wake up to pans on the floor, broken glasses, the refrigerator open, TV on. You know, the whole poltergeist cliche. I always thought it was bullshit until it started happening to me. I just knew it was Robert. He was angry, full of rage and hatred because I was allowed to move on, to go to college, to date, to live, while he had lost all of that because of me. And yes, Carlos and his friends were the ones who actually did what they did, but he was only there because of me. I thought I could live with that. I had to. It was my burden, and I had earned it. It never stopped. At least, not completely. Sometimes I would have a few days of peace, a few weeks. Then it stopped for 2 years. When I got married, I thought it was finally over, and I could be happy again. But then I really saw Robert's anger. He became violent. Tina, my wife, would wake up with scratches and bruises. At first, she thought she had done it to herself during the day. Then, she began to suspect me. The more distant she became, the more violent Robert became. The bruises were bad enough that people started asking questions. I started to notice people looking at me with hate and disgust. Co-workers stopped looking at me, not even saying good morning anymore. Friends started ignoring my phone calls. Even my family suspected me and cut me off. Finally, Tina left. She tried to sue me, to have me arrested, but there was no evidence. Still, it was enough to ruin my life. It was enough to have rocks thrown at my window at night, to have my car completely destroyed, to have my house spray painted with words like wife beater, abuser, monster. I was a monster. That was certain. So I moved. And I moved far away. I got a cabin in the woods and went to live there, away from civilization. I did some small online jobs here and there, just enough to survive. But Robert was always there. He always made sure to make my life miserable. He would keep me awake at night several days in a row. He would throw things and break televisions and computers. But I deserved it. And I was so sorry for him. Then I thought, if it worked once, why not try to talk to him one last time? So I bought another Ouija board and tried to talk to him. And this time, he answered. Or rather, his father did. See, what I didn't tell you is that after what happened, and a few months before it all started happening to me, Robert's father went crazy. He killed his wife and then, well, I guess you know what he did. All this time, I blamed Robert. Yes, I know I said I deserved it, but it made me angry. He ruined everything. He made my life miserable. What I also didn't tell you is that although it was Robert's father who beat Tina, who made her life hell while she was with me, it wasn't just him. One night, I got tired of her blaming me, of my friends blaming me. We got into this big fight and I hit her. It was a hard punch. I immediately regretted it and started crying and ran to help her, but she just pushed me away. She fought me and ran out of the house. Then she filed for divorce and tried to have me arrested. I was and am the only one responsible for how miserable my life has become. I betrayed Robert. I caused his parents so much pain that his father did what he did. I caused pain to my family and pain to Tina. I am a monster and a horrible person. But I am still human, and I am so scared. His father told me that night, 3 days. He told me his name and 3 days, and nothing else. Every day, he became more violent. The dreams where I was Robert came back, and when I woke up, I was covered in bruises. I began to find knives on the floor, stuck to the door of my room. Today is the 3rd day, and and I can feel his presence right outside my room. I know this is my end, and I am so afraid of what he will do to me. I post this as my last words. Please, please, if you know my parents, if you know Ben and Sarah Wilkins of Springfield, Maine, if you can reach them in any way, please tell my parents that I am so sorry, that I love them. I am sorry, Robert.